And the fact that Schiff hasn't blinked since 1992. And he didn't take the news so well. The disgraced Democrat went on TikTok to complain. Behold.
Hello, I'm Congressman Adam Schiff with some troubling news. Today, Kevin McCarthy removed me from the House Intelligence Committee, all for doing my job, for holding Trump accountable and standing up to the extreme MAGA Republicans.
Senator Schiff, given the ongoing political tensions and Trump's actions toward his critics, do you think President Biden's preemptive pardons turned out to be more important than initially expected? Let's first tell people what that means, preemptive pardons. That was pretty unprecedented, right? Before he left office, Joe Biden pardoned you and a number of people who he thought Trump would go after.
No, I take the opposite view. I don't think he should have given the pardons at all.
Really?
No, I don't think he should have, and I was vocal about that at the time.
Can you refuse a pardon?
That's less clear because in the case of the January 6th committee, he pardoned essentially the whole.
It all started with a video that felt less like a message from a congressman and more like a performance. Adam Schiff, freshly removed from the House Intelligence Committee, turned to TikTok of all places to plead his case. Sitting stiffly in front of the camera, he declared that he was being punished simply for doing his job, for standing up to Trump, and for resisting what he called extreme Republicans. But here's the thing, people weren't buying it. This wasn't some brave act of defiance. It looked like political theater staged for clicks and sympathy. TikTok, the very platform lawmakers constantly warn us about because of its ties to China, suddenly became Schiff's safe space to cry foul. Instead of taking accountability for years of controversy, Schiff painted himself as the victim of a personal vendetta. He delivered the message with that trademark stare people joke about so unblinking it feels robotic. Viewers couldn't help but wonder, was this about principle, or was it about keeping his image alive in front of a new, younger audience? His words sounded polished, but the timing made it feel like another chapter in his long history of deflection. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and share more intriguing stories. Now let's continue. Because Schiff's TikTok wasn't just a message, it was the spark that opened the door for one of the harshest public grillings he's faced in years. And this time, it didn't come from his usual political enemies. It came from someone his own side didn't expect. And that's where things got really interesting. When Adam Schiff sat across from Bill Maher, he wasn't facing some right-wing firebrand ready to throw cheap shots. He was facing someone known for tearing into both sides whenever they spin nonsense. Maher didn't hold back.
We want to tell people what we're going to do for them. Healthcare, environment, those kind of issues. For example, I've seen you on TV a lot in the last couple of years. I know everything you know, or that you tell us, about the Russian situation. I don't have a clue what you think about healthcare. I've never heard it.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you're for Medicare for all, or improve Obamacare, or get a chicken. I don't know what.
Yeah.
He looked Schiff in the eye and told him something millions of people had been thinking for years. All Schiff ever talked about was Trump and Russia. Not healthcare, not the environment, not everyday issues that actually impact people's lives. Maher pressed him directly, "What do you stand for? Are you for Medicare for all, improving Obamacare, something else?" Nobody knew, because Schiff never said. Instead, for years he had been front and center on television, repeating the same lines about collusion and corruption, but never offering solutions to problems regular families actually face. It was a moment that felt like peeling away a mask. Schiff wasn't being confronted by a Republican attack dog this time. He was being called out by someone with credibility on the left, someone who isn't afraid to say when his own side is failing. The awkward silence, the lack of a clear answer, exposed exactly what critics have been saying. Schiff had built his career on one obsession, and when pushed outside that bubble, he had nothing to show. This wasn't a fiery debate or a staged argument. It was calm, it was surgical, and it left Schiff looking powerless. And it set the stage for everything that came next. That calm takedown opened the floodgates to a much bigger problem for Schiff. When you look past the headlines and cable news soundbites, there's nothing there. No legislative wins, no major bills with his name on them. no real accomplishments that improve the lives of people he represents. Instead, his career reads like a highlight reel of impeachment speeches and cable news appearances. For years, Schiff positioned himself as the man standing between Trump and democracy.
Schiff is not only a stone-cold, hopeless loser, but he is one of the most corrupt, one of the most shameful, one of the most heinous individuals ever to serve in public office in America. And everything he's devoted his life to has been debunked, discredited, and discarded. He literally represents the face of failure.
He repeated claims of corruption, of collusion, of conspiracies. But when the smoke cleared, there were no policy victories to point to. While other lawmakers talked about improving schools, cutting costs, or fixing infrastructure, Schiff was on television playing detective, telling the world that justice was just around the corner. Critics compared it to an obsession, almost like a person online who spends all night posting conspiracy theories, convinced that the next piece of evidence will prove everything. Except this wasn't some anonymous user, it was a congressman wielding real power. And instead of building trust, he burned it. That's what made Maher's comments sting so badly. They weren't just personal jabs, they cut to the core of Schiff's record. After all the speeches, after all the press conferences, what had he actually done for healthcare? For the economy? For his state of California? The answer was painfully clear. Nothing people could see. And the cracks in his carefully crafted image were only just beginning to show. Those cracks became impossible to ignore when the conversation turned to the biggest scandal Schiff could never shake: the Russia collusion narrative. For years, Schiff went on television again and again, claiming he had solid proof that Trump had worked with the Kremlin. He didn't just hint at it, he swore up and down that the evidence was there, hidden behind closed doors, too sensitive to share but absolutely undeniable. And people believed him. News outlets ran with his statements. Headlines painted a picture of a smoking gun that would finally bring Trump down.
Just looks like you're stalking him. I think in the eyes of the people who don't follow it that closely, which is most of the country, here's the thing about Bob Mueller. He's like the last person, maybe the last thing in America that left and right agreed on. Left and right basically agreed. This is a guy of honor. This is an honest guy. This is an honest broker. Whatever he says goes. Americans are not into details. Don't read it to me, Bob. Just give me a thumbs up, a thumbs down. The fact that he was like, if you couldn't impeach before, how are you going to impeach after?
Schiff became the face of the so-called resistance, always promising that the next hearing, the next report, would reveal everything. But the evidence never came. Not once. When the investigations ended and the dust settled, the reality was that there was no smoking gun. The story Schiff had sold for years fell apart, leaving behind nothing but frustration and division. Critics say it wasn't just a mistake, it was a calculated lie that he repeated so many times. He may have convinced himself it was true. And here's the sting. When it all collapsed, Schiff didn't apologize, didn't admit he had misled the country. Instead, he shifted the narrative, insisting he was being punished for standing up to Trump. But the truth, as his opponents put it, was far harsher. He wasn't a martyr, he was a politician caught in his own web of exaggerations. And while he clung to that defense, the country was already moving on, facing crises that demanded real leadership. But while Schiff was busy chasing ghosts, the world was changing around him. In early 2020, as whispers of a strange new virus spread, Schiff and his allies were still locked into their impeachment crusade. Hearing after hearing, headline after headline, it was all about Trump. Meanwhile, the coronavirus was silently crossing borders, creeping into communities, and overwhelming hospitals. Greg Gutfeld later pointed out just how damaging that obsession was. Instead of focusing on protecting the nation from what became one of the most devastating health crises in modern history, Congress was glued to cameras, staging yet another round of political theater. Schiff had poured 3 years into pushing a narrative that collapsed, and in the process, he distracted both the government and the media from what truly mattered. Gutfeld's frustration boiled over on live television. He said Schiff didn't just waste time, he wasted trust. That by using his power to spin a false story, Schiff left the country unprepared for a crisis that changed everything. And then, in typical Gutfeld fashion, he even joked that his evil twin thought Schiff deserved prison time for the damage he caused.
I mean, the Mueller report is, at the end of the day, that firecracker that, goes up and then the one that fizzles. Oh, look, nothing. Do you think you guys relied too much on that?
It was a joke on the surface, but behind it was a very real anger. Because it wasn't just about politics anymore. Lives were being lost. Families were being torn apart. And while the nation needed leaders focused on solutions, Schiff was still performing the same tired act, convinced impeachment was more important than reality. And then, as if none of that mattered, Schiff tried to flip the script. Just days after being kicked off the Intelligence Committee, he launched a glossy Senate campaign. The timing was so perfect it felt scripted. One moment he's on TikTok crying about being a victim, the next he's rolling out a polished ad with dramatic music, pledging to protect democracy and fight extremism.
Something's got to be done for Adam Schiff, because he created 3 years of a massive fallacy that did so much damage to this country and made us miss probably one of the most important stories of our lifetime. We were having hearings on impeachment while the coronavirus was exploding. We talked about that virus in green rooms, but we had to do this impeachment story. We had to show these hearings. It's all on him, man. He's got to go. They got to investigate him. They got to hold him accountable. I'm not going to say he should go to prison, but my evil twin will say he should go away to prison for a very long time.
It wasn't a humble return, it was a promotion attempt, and people noticed. Critics pointed out how the ad ignored every controversy in his past. No mention of the failed collusion claims, no mention of his censure in Congress, no explanation for why he spent years attacking Trump instead of working on issues like inflation, housing, or healthcare. Instead, it was the same formula he had been using for years. Bash Trump, wave the flag of democracy, and hope people forgot the rest. Bill Maher saw right through it. On his show, he pressed Schiff about the real issues facing Californians: skyrocketing costs, homelessness, crime. But Schiff didn't offer clear answers. He fell back on polished lines, sidestepping the tough questions.
Adam Schiff announced this morning he's running for U.S. Senate in California, which is guaranteed to boost U-Haul rentals headed for Texas. He unveiled a highly polished and produced political ad right on the heels of getting booted from the House Intel Committee. Coincidence? I think.
For voters already tired of recycled campaign slogans, this was another red flag. It revealed the bigger problem. Schiff wasn't running on results, because he didn't have any. He was running on outrage, the same outrage he had used to build his brand on cable news. And this time, the cracks in his playbook were becoming too obvious to hide. Those cracks split wide open when the questions turned to cultural issues, the kind of debates that fire up voters on both sides. One of the most direct topics was men competing in women's sports, a hot-button issue that demands a clear stance. But when Schiff was pressed on it, he dodged like a ballerina on a minefield. He wouldn't commit, wouldn't give a straight answer, just danced around the question as if hoping it would disappear. That hesitation spoke volumes. People don't always agree on cultural issues, but they respect clarity. Say what you believe, take a stand, and let voters decide if they support you. Schiff's refusal to plant his flag anywhere didn't come off as thoughtful. It came off as cowardly. And it wasn't the only time. When news broke that a judge had allegedly helped an illegal immigrant slip out the back door to avoid ICE agents, Schiff suddenly went quiet. For years, he chased every rumor about Trump, repeating half-baked stories with confidence. But now, when faced with a real scandal involving immigration and law enforcement, he claimed he didn't know enough to comment. It was selective outrage at its finest. He had laser focus when it meant attacking Trump, but when it risked upsetting his own base, suddenly he was clueless. That double standard revealed what critics had been saying all along. Schiff's principles bend depending on whose side is under fire, and Americans were starting to see through it. And then came the hammer drop. Schiff was officially censured by the House of Representatives. That punishment has only happened to 26 members in all of American history, and Schiff's name is now etched onto that short, infamous list. The reason? His relentless promotion of the Trump-Russia collusion hoax. Years of insisting he had proof, years of fueling a national obsession, all of it collapsing into a censure vote that said, loud and clear, enough. Critics didn't just see it as a slap on the wrist, they saw it as Washington finally acknowledging the damage he had caused. The moment carried heavy symbolism. Schiff's defiance, his unblinking stare that people joke hasn't changed since the early 90s, suddenly looked less like confidence and more like stubborn arrogance. Even as his colleagues condemned him, he doubled down, acting as if the punishment proved he was a martyr. But outside the walls of Congress, people weren't laughing with him, they were laughing at him. This wasn't just about a failed narrative anymore, it was about trust. The censure showed that Schiff's colleagues were done pretending his endless grandstanding was harmless. And for voters already frustrated with soaring costs, broken promises, and leaders who seem more interested in sound bites than solutions, Schiff's name became a symbol of everything they were sick of. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get any worse, critics started asking the one question Schiff couldn't answer. What had he actually done for the people who elected him? That question hit harder than any political attack. What had Adam Schiff actually delivered for his state, for his district, for the everyday people paying the price of rising costs? Californians are living with sky-high gas prices, groceries that eat entire paychecks, and a housing crisis that's forcing families to leave the state. And yet, Schiff had no track record of fixing any of it. Instead of tackling inflation or offering solutions for the border crisis, Schiff spent years glued to cable news cameras, chasing headlines with speeches about Trump. While his constituents struggled, he was busy playing the role of political celebrity, feeding the endless drama of Washington. Critics say he turned public office into a stage where the performance mattered more than the results. Greg Gutfeld seized on this during a fiery monologue, torching Schiff's Senate dreams. He warned voters that if they wanted more lies, more dodging, and more empty words, then Schiff was their guy. But if they actually wanted integrity, solutions, and real leadership, they had to look elsewhere. It wasn't just a rant, it was a warning. The message was clear. A man who spent years selling a false story and ignoring real crises should not be rewarded with a Senate seat. And it left viewers with a simple but damning conclusion. Schiff hadn't been serving the people he'd been serving himself. And that's the part Schiff can't escape the pattern of serving himself while pretending to serve the country. He wasn't just wrong about Russia. He ran with a fake dossier, pushed it into the spotlight, and turned it into a nationwide obsession. When it all unraveled, he didn't apologize, didn't own up, didn't even blink. He just moved on to the next headline, the next soundbite, the next campaign ad. Now, with his eyes on the Senate, Californians are expected to forget the past and buy into the same recycled promises. But people are waking up. They see that his brand isn't built on solutions, it's built on outrage. He positions himself as the defender of democracy, but when pressed on real issues, he dodges. When it's his opponents, he screams corruption. When it's his side, he shrugs. That's not leadership, that's manipulation. Critics say he has become the poster child for everything people despise about Washington: the lies, the grandstanding, the cowardice, the hunger for power disguised as public service. And it's not just his enemies pointing it out anymore, it's commentators across the spectrum, it's frustrated voters, it's people tired of being distracted while their problems get worse. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also, drop your thoughts in the comments. See you on the next one.